The Devil's Footprints. On the night of February 9th, 1855, after a light snowfall, a series of hoof-like marks appeared in the snow. These footprints, measuring 1.5 to 2.5 inches wide and 8 inches apart, continued throughout the countryside for a total of over 100 miles, and although veering at various points, for the greater part of their course followed straight lines. Houses, rivers, haystacks, and other obstacles were traveled straight over, and footprints appeared on the tops of snow-covered roofs and high walls which lay in the footprints' path, as well as leading up to and exiting various drain pipes of as small as a 4-inch diameter. There were also rumors about sightings of a devil-like figure in the Devon area during the scare. Many townspeople armed themselves and attempted to track down the beast responsible without success. Recently, on the night of March 12, 2009, more strange marks, corresponding to those left in 1855, were found again in Devon.
My name is Nicholas. I'm currently a freshman at Syracuse University, which doesn't exactly sit in the safest area. I just went through a breakup with my first girlfriend, so I started getting back into the online dating scene. I was using the app Hinge when I found some blonde girl named Stephanie who I really connected with. She also went to Syracuse. We both liked to read, go to the movies, we even had the same sense of humor. I suggested we go on a movie date, and she said she'd love to. She told me to meet her at some specific point near campus and she'd pick me up. So, around 9 o'clock, I waited on some corner of a normal neighborhood block, waiting for Stephanie. She asked me to share my location with her, and so I did. A few minutes later, I saw a car turn down the street and start approaching me. Then it stopped in front of me, and the driver rolled down the window. It wasn't Stephanie though, but some old random guy. He asked what I was doing alone out here, which was insanely weird first of all. Then I said I was waiting for someone. He asked if I was waiting for Stephanie, and I said, yeah, how'd you know? He said he was Stephanie's father, and told me to hop in so he could give me a ride to her. I took a good look at him, and he looked a little old to be her father, to be honest. I'm no idiot when it comes to sketchy situations, so I said in a firm voice, why didn't you tell me you'd be picking me up? He claimed he didn't trust a random guy meeting up with his daughter, and wanted to meet me first. I took another good look at the man and didn't say anything. I simply started walking away in the opposite direction from where his car was facing. He started yelling hey hey, sounding surprised that I was just walking away like that, but I've heard way too many kidnapping stories to know where this could potentially go. I heard the guy's car moving, and I turned to make sure he wasn't doing a U-turn to follow me. I breathed a sigh of relief when he drove straight and turned left out of sight. I continued walking down the block towards campus. I got to the corner of the block and was just about to make a turn when I noticed what I was pretty sure to be the same car the man was driving, just parked on the side of the road with the light shut off. I briefly tried looking into the window as I passed, but the glass was tinted. I tried not making it obvious that I was suspicious and continued walking. I got a text from this so-called Stephanie person saying, why didn't you get in the car with my dad? I ignored the text and continued walking. I kept looking back to see if the car would move. When I got to an intersection in the road, I turned right and then full-on booked it in the direction of campus. Surprisingly, I wasn't followed. I made it back to campus out of breath and started walking to my dorm building. I felt like I heard footsteps following me though. I thought maybe I was being paranoid, but when I heard a piece of broken glass being kicked by someone's shoe, I knew I was being tailed. I made a point of ducking down behind a van and stopping to give me time to listen for where their footsteps were coming. They were a few cars away from me. Then I remembered. I never stopped sharing my location with Stephanie, or should I say that man. I saw him. It was that old man. He was approaching from between two cars across from me. He yelled something that I didn't fully understand, but it sounded like he said, come back and I'll take you to her. He had to be like 60-something. There's no way he would catch me if I sprinted. I lost him easily when I ran, and made it back to my dorm room. My roommate wasn't there, so I had no one to talk to about it. But when I lay in my bed, I got another text from that man, and it was shocking. It said, you're a little piece of fucking shit. "You're lucky you got away. I would have strangled your ugly ass." I still have the screenshot. I replied saying thanks for the threat, it's going straight to the police, and I blocked his number. I still have the conversation saved as evidence, and I plan on going to the police with it eventually. Hopefully they are able to do something about it.
Living gnome. In 2008, a creepy gnome was caught on film in Argentina. Jose Alvarez, who filmed the gnome, reported that they caught the creature on film while larking about in their hometown of General Güemes, Argentina. He stated, "We were chatting about our last fishing trip. It was 1 in the morning. I began to film a bit with my mobile phone while the others were chatting and joking. Suddenly we heard something, a weird noise as if someone was throwing stones. We looked to one side and saw that the grass was moving. To begin with, we thought it was a dog, but when we saw this gnome-like figure begin to emerge, we were really afraid." Other locals have since come forward to say that they have spotted the gnome, and the town has been covered in a pall of fear ever since the first sighting.
When I was 18, I had a side job as a part-time janitor at my high school over the summer. I would work sometimes days and sometimes nights, anywhere from 9 a.m. to 12 a.m., depending on how much money I needed. Oftentimes I would be left to lock up the building when the older janitors have left. This was a time before the high school had cameras installed in every single hallway. So one night, one of my superiors, Tom, had to leave early, meaning I'd be finishing up the rest of my shift alone, and I'd be locking up for the night. He told me to text him if I need anything, as he always did, and then he left. I loved it when I was left alone because usually I'd just do half an hour of work and then just hang around on my phone or leave early and still get paid for the whole shift. I definitely pushed it with the things I'd get away with at that place. One of the things Tom asked me to do before leaving was bring all the extra seats in the gymnasium from the assembly down to the basement storage room. So I figured I'd do that, then just go home. I grabbed a stack of 6 chairs and started carrying it down to the basement. The lights in the storage room were very dim. They kind of suck. The whole basement of that school wasn't exactly pretty. It felt more like a basement to a warehouse. Anyway, there were what appeared to be a bunch of art mannequins covered by paint cloths. You know, those big things that look like blankets. It seemed all of the school's art supplies were stored down here. I dropped the stack of chairs down where the rest of the chairs were stored, and went back up to the gym to get more. When I came back down with more chairs, I noticed one of the mannequins was exposed now. The blanket was removed from on top of it. I know for sure it was covered minutes earlier because it was one of the front ones. I texted Tom saying, "I think someone's down in the basement." He said back, "What do you mean?" And I said one of the art cloths were moved. He took a minute to respond saying no one else should be there. Then I noticed something. The art cloth, tucked in the corner of the storage room, sitting outside of the light that was produced at the center of the room. It was covering something, surely. I started to tiptoe over to it, but when I was a few feet away from it, I realized whatever was under that cloth was moving just ever so slightly. There was undoubtedly someone hiding under there. I ran back upstairs and locked the basement door. I texted Tom saying someone is hiding under a cloth in the basement. He said call the cops, but I insisted he just come back since he only just left like 10 minutes ago. He didn't want to come back though. He told me to be a man and confront whoever was down there. So I went down to the basement again. However, the cloth was now strewn flat on the floor, and whoever was hiding under there was gone. But possibly the scariest thing was yet to happen. As I stood in the storage room, there were loud metallic thumps coming from above my head. I looked up and saw indents slowly forming in the large air vent above me. Someone was crawling through the main vent, then just stopped literally above me. And then, bangs. Bangs like whoever was in there was trying to break open the floor of the air vent. I didn't know what was happening, but I was officially done with this. I ran up the stairs, locked up the school, and went home. I told Tom the partial truth the next day, that I thought I saw someone in the corner and it was gone when I went back. And I claimed there was nothing else I could say. Thank God it was my last week there, so it wasn't my concern anymore.
James Warson. On September 3, 1873, a man named James Warson had accepted a challenge to race in record time from the town of Leamington to the town of Coventry, a 20-mile trek. He had been boasting of his foot skills and then was asked to prove them, so, with sporting good spirits, he set about to do just that. Two friends, Hamerson Burns and Barham Wise, followed behind in a horse-drawn carriage. Burns brought along his camera. Warson was never out of their sight, and would often turn around while running to exchange some friendly words with the two riders. Running in the middle of the road, Warson suddenly appeared to stumble and pitch forward, having time enough for only one short, piercing scream. Wise later said it was the most ghastly sound either of us have ever heard. But as Warson pitched forward with that terrible cry, instead of falling to the ground as he appeared to be about to have done, he completely and totally vanished in mid-fall before ever striking the ground. The road itself told the story, and Wise took the pictures to prove it. There, in the soft dirt, were Warson's footprints. They led down the middle of the road, looked as if the runner stumbled, and there they disappeared. A search was called and the locals scoured the area for James. The bloodhounds used in the search were strangely reluctant to approach the spot where Warson disappeared. He was never seen or heard from again. August 7th, 1973 will remain a day of mystery and possible tragedy. Several people in New Mexico that day, using CB radios, heard the disturbing cries for help from a little boy. He said his name was Larry, and that he was trapped in a red and white pickup truck. He was with his father, who he thinks had a heart attack and was dead. He said that they had been on a rabbit hunting trip when his father collapsed on the steering wheel. Larry claimed that the truck had flipped over into a ravine and both doors were jammed shut and he was unable to escape. The boy's signal faded in and out over the next few days, and was also heard in California, Wyoming, and Arizona. In a panic, Larry began to flip between channels crying for help. Police began a search and rescue team. One helicopter pilot who was searching the Manzano Mountains in New Mexico for Larry says that he made contact with a little boy calling for help, but he called himself David, not Larry. A family traveling from Missouri was reported missing on August 11th, and they had a son named Larry, but they were eventually found. On August 12th, an army sergeant claimed to have spoken to the boy for 3 hours, but could not get him to give more information about himself, like his phone number or address, etc. No more contacts could be made with Larry. It is presumed his battery died. The search was called off on August 13th. The police stated that there was no concrete evidence. They also say that the boy, if real, may have died sooner than the transmission stopped, and that the subsequent transmissions from different states, some were even heard in Canada, were hoaxes. Many believe it was a hoax, but those who spoke to Larry swear to this day that it wasn't, that the emotion and the crying they heard from little Larry was no doubt the real thing. On November 29th, 1970, a professor and his daughters were hiking in the Isdalen Valley in Norway when they came across the partially charred remains of a young woman. She was surrounded by a large quantity of sleeping pills and bottles of gasoline. All the clothing she was wearing had the tags removed and her fingerprints had been sanded off. A dental screening was done, and some of her dental work was done using techniques only found in Latin America. She was eventually traced back to 2 suitcases at the NSB train station in Bergen. Her luggage contained a prescription lotion with the doctor's name removed, and a few pieces of broken glass with partial fingerprints, and 500 German marks, which is the equivalent of $350 under the lining of one of the suitcases. They discovered the woman had traveled by train across Europe under 9 different names. There were diaries found with her things that contained cryptic notes that the police deciphered were codes listing the places that she had been. Witnesses say she wore wigs as she traveled and spoke several languages such as French, German, English, and Dutch. She stayed at several hotels in Bergen. After checking into each, she would change rooms several times, always requiring a balcony, and would always order porridge with milk for room service. A local man came to the police saying that 5 days prior to the body's discovery, he came across a very elegant woman while hiking. He noted that she wasn't dressed for being outdoors, much less on a remote hiking trail, and that her face was distorted with fear. He claimed that she attempted to mouth something to him, but was followed closely by 2 large men in black coats. The man waited 32 years to come public with this story, stating that when he contacted the police, the officer who answered told him, "Forget her, she was dispatched. The case will never be solved."
I was house sitting for my grandma one weekend while she went to Florida with some of her church friends. I was sleeping in the guest bedroom next to her room. The guest bedroom always had 2 twin beds inside of it that my brother and I would sleep in when we had sleepovers at her house. I took the bed next to the window, but before getting into bed, I checked all the doors making sure they were locked. When I did get into bed, it was early, and I didn't actually go to sleep for a while. There wasn't much to do at my grandma's house. I was just on my phone for an hour or 2, watching videos, texting people, whatever. That's when I thought I could start hearing someone's voice outside. It sounded like a woman's voice, saying hello. I left the bedroom and inched my way closer to the front door, moving slow because I was trying to listen.
Hello.
It was a woman's voice, just going hello like every 10 seconds. As I got closer to the front door, I realized that's where it seemed to be coming from. My grandma's door doesn't have a peephole, but the windows in her dining room gave a clear view of the front porch, so I went over to that window to attempt to get a view of who was out there. I tried peeking my head in between the plastic blinds without making it obvious, but I guess I didn't do a good job of that, because when I looked, I did see a woman on my grandma's stoop, and she was looking right at me, as if she knew I was going to be looking through those blinds. Once again, she said hello, with some freakish smile on her face. This woman was older, but don't picture her as some innocent-looking, small old lady. She looked like she was maybe late 50s, early 60s, and something about her face just skeeved me out. I moved away from the window and thought maybe it was one of my grandma's friends. It was midnight, though. Why would anyone come to the door this late? And why wouldn't she knock or ring the bell? Why was she just standing out there going hello over and over? I was genuinely unsettled. I just went back to the guest bedroom and shut the door. Now with the door shut as opposed to before, I couldn't hear that woman anymore. Maybe it was that, or she just decided to leave. I started texting everyone about it, my sisters, my friends, telling them how bizarre it was. But a good amount of time passed in silence, and I was starting to calm down. My sisters were telling me to call Grandma, but there was a 0% chance she was awake, and she barely ever even checked her cell phone anyway. Just like that, something broke the silence. A banging at the window. Not a knocking or tapping, banging. I felt that fierce pain in my chest area as my body entered that fight or flight mode. Shortly after the banging stopped, I heard that familiar voice say hello. With that boost of adrenaline, I guess I had the extra confidence to grab the blind and push it up. There I was, face to face with this horrifying older lady, with only a thin layer of glass between us. I screamed at her smiling, gross face, "I'm calling the cops." I pulled the blind back down and ran back outside to the living room. I looked around the house, then ran upstairs to box myself into the upstairs guest bedroom. I didn't want to actually call the cops. I don't know why. I wanted to just wait it out. I crawled into the bed in the upstairs guest bedroom and tucked myself under the covers. A couple hours later, I was still awake, and I finally only then went back downstairs to look outside each window. That freaky old lady seemed to be gone. The next morning, I called my grandma and told her what happened. She started yelling into the phone, clearly panicking and distressed. She told me how a few days earlier, she was being watched in the grocery store by some woman about 10 years younger than her, who just kept smiling at her for no reason. I told her to calm down. I didn't entirely know whether to correlate the two or not, but when we eventually got off the phone with each other, I did have to give it a second thought. My grandma's 75, and she has lost a bit of her wits, so I do have to take some of the things she says with a grain of salt. But the way she yelled into the phone about the woman in the store really gave me the chills, and I still wonder if it could have been the same person.
In September 1931, the Irving family claimed to hear persistent scratching and rustling noises behind their farmhouse's wooden wall panels. At first, they thought it was a rat, but then the unseen creature began making different sounds, sometimes spitting like a ferret, or growling like a dog, or gurgling like a baby. The creature soon revealed an ability to speak, and introduced itself as Jeff, a mongoose. It claimed to have been born in New Delhi, India, in 1852. According to Vori, the daughter, who was the only person to see him properly, Jeff was the size of a small rat with yellowish fur and a large bushy tail. Jeff variously claimed to be an extra clever mongoose, an earthbound spirit, and a ghost in the form of a weasel. He once said, "I am a freak. I have hands and I have feet, and if you saw me, you would faint. You'd be petrified, mummified, turned into stone or a pillar of salt." Vori Irving, who took Jeff under her wing, died in 2005. In an interview published late in life, she claimed that Jeff was not her creation.